Well, today's modern tech is pretty impressive, and we're right to be astonished by the people who come up with it. However, the achievements of our ancient ancestors using nothing but the materials available to them in their own time are just as jaw-dropping. Without cranes, satellites, or AI, they built structures that still baffle engineers today. So, join us for today's video as we're going to explore 5 mysterious features of ancient monuments that you didn't know about. The secret joints of Stonehenge. Have you ever seen pictures of Stonehenge and wondered who built it, or more puzzlingly, how? Stonehenge is the name of a unique man-made monument in Wiltshire, England. The site is made up of enormous sandstone blocks, each weighing around 28 tons and towering up to 18 feet. Originally, these giants stood upright in a perfect circle measuring roughly 100 feet across. Inside that ring stood smaller blue stones, also arranged in a circle, and deeper within it is a horseshoe-shaped layout of additional stones to complete the design. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. But there's a particular detail that's only recently come into focus. How did those massive stones stay upright, let alone support others balanced on top? New finds reveal that the builders used a remarkably clever method: mortise and tenon joints, the same principle used in woodworking and even modern furniture assembly. Each upright sarsen stone had carved bumps, or tenons, that fit snugly into matching mortise sockets carved into the horizontal lintels placed above them. The stones effectively locked into place without mortar, nails, or metal. It's a method often compared to Lego, but don't let the simplicity fool you. Executing this with 40-ton stones is a whole different level of engineering. The precision needed to pull this off is staggering. The joints had to be carved by hand with perfect alignment. If even one tenon was slightly off, the lintel wouldn't sit securely, and the entire structure could have failed. Some of the lintels stretch over 10 feet long, and yet they sit balanced, thanks to these joints, high above the Salisbury Plain. That level of craftsmanship using primitive tools is nothing short of surgical. Transporting the stones was another challenge entirely. Some were brought from just 17 miles away, but others, like the blue stones, traveled nearly 300 miles, likely hauled by sleds over land and floated across rivers on rafts. Modern reenactments of this journey have shown just how demanding it was. Teams of 25 volunteers barely managed to move a single stone using ancient-style sleds, and one of the stones even slipped into the sea during a boat test. Clearly, the original builders faced enormous obstacles, and yet succeeded. Now, what's even more intriguing is the monument's alignment with celestial events. The layout of the stones isn't random. It tracks the sun's solstices and the moon's movements. That means the builders not only understood architecture and physics, but also astronomy. This wasn't guesswork or some Reddit fan theory. It was intentional, mathematical, and precise. Stonehenge still stands today, partially restored to reflect how it looked nearly 4,000 years ago. It remains one of the few surviving testaments to the brilliance of early civilizations, built without cranes, blueprints, or machines, but with intellect, foresight, and the will to be remembered. The Terracotta acrobats. Archaeology lovers around the globe have undoubtedly heard of the famed Terracotta Army, which was discovered in the 1970s in Xi'an in northwest China and attracts millions of visitors every single year. And if you've watched Netflix's Mysteries of the Terracotta Warriors, you've likely seen just how vast and intricate Emperor Qin Shi Huang's burial complex truly is. But beyond the iconic armored soldiers lies something far less known and arguably just as captivating: the Terracotta acrobats. While the Terracotta Army was crafted to serve as guardians of the emperor's afterlife, another group of figures discovered at the site suggests a more human, intimate side of Qin's vision of eternity. These ancient figures, like acrobats, dancers, and strongmen, have become a subject of growing fascination among historians for what they reveal about ancient Chinese court culture, artistry, and possible global influences. Unlike the rigid posture and uniform of the military statues, the acrobats are carved with striking anatomical realism. Discovered in a separate pit in 1999, 11 of these figures were found, each distinct in body shape, size, and pose. Sculpted in dynamic postures and wearing only loincloths, their physicality stands in direct contrast to the heavily armored warriors. Their detail is super astonishing. Bulging muscles, lifelike movement, and expressive stances, which suggest they were modeled after real performers from the imperial court. Some scholars argue these figures might not be acrobats in the strictest sense, but rather dancers or ceremonial entertainers. Their poses vary enough to spark debate. However, what's clear is that they were meant to entertain the emperor in the afterlife, just as the army was meant to protect him. That aligns with ancient Chinese beliefs, where emperors were buried with everything they might need beyond death, from guards and servants to musicians and exotic animals. What makes the acrobats even more fascinating is the suggestion that they may reflect outside artistic influence. Their level of anatomical precision has led some experts to propose that Chinese sculptors may have been exposed to West Asian or even Greek sculptural traditions, raising the possibility of early cultural exchanges long before the Silk Road formally emerged. These acrobats add a vital new layer to our understanding of the necropolis, not just a military monument, but a full representation of court life. As excavations continue, these silent, dynamic performers remind us that the Terracotta tomb was not merely about control and conquest, but also spectacle, culture, and the emperor's desire to be surrounded by life, even in death. This eighth wonder of the world is also said to carry the curse, but who knows if it's real or a myth. Tale of the Sphinx. On the edges of the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx stands tall, defying time, eroding winds, and concealing secrets that stretch back millennia. This amazing statue isn't just a symbol of ancient Egyptian civilization. It's a gateway into a realm of riddles and royal ambition. Most people recognize it by its serene expression and infamous missing nose, but some of its lesser-known features often go completely overlooked, like the tail. Well, yes, the Sphinx has a tail. Compared to the rest of the monument's scale, it's modest, measuring around 6.5 feet in length and barely draws attention. It was carved directly from the same slab of limestone bedrock as the rest of the figure. Scholars believe the original tail was much longer, but centuries of erosion and damage have worn it down to its current size. Some researchers suggest the Sphinx was originally carved as a complete lion, with the tail being the final remnant of that identity, while others propose it had symbolic weight, perhaps signifying pharaonic strength or divine authority. Another persistent myth surrounding it is the missing nose. A widely circulated story blames Napoleon's troops for shooting it off during the French campaign in Egypt in the late 1700s. Well, it sounds entertaining, sure, but historically it's inaccurate. Records show that the nose was already gone long before Napoleon ever set foot in Egypt. The Arab historian al-Makrizi, writing in the 15th century, documented that the damage was caused by a Sufi Muslim named Muhammad Sa'im al-Dahr. Offended by peasants offering tribute to the Sphinx as a deity, he is said to have defaced the statue in 1378 as an act of iconoclasm. There's also the curious case of the missing beard. The beard wasn't part of the original design. It was likely added during the New Kingdom period, between 1570 BCE and 1069 BCE. Unlike the main body, it was carved separately and affixed to the chin. Fragments of the beard were uncovered in the early 1800s and are now housed in both the British Museum and the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Scholars still debate whether the beard was meant to reinforce the Sphinx's identity as a divine king or simply reflected evolving artistic trends in pharaonic iconography. Despite its global fame, the Sphinx remains cloaked in mystery. Its true origin, original name, and exact purpose are all subjects of scholarly debate. Yet, Standing silent on the western bank of the Nile, it continues to watch over the sands, unmoved, unreadable, and undeniably majestic. Optical illusions. For many historians, the Parthenon is a monumental symbol of ancient Athenian democracy and the cradle of Western civilization. The structure has long captured global admiration, not just for its grandeur, but for the intelligence behind its design. Completed in 438 BCE, at the height of Athens' power, this temple appears to be a model of geometric precision, with straight columns and right angles. But that impression isn't accidental. It's the result of optical corrections built into the structure by its creators. Though it seems perfectly symmetrical, the Parthenon's design includes subtle distortions that were introduced to correct for visual misperceptions. Architects Ictinus and Callicrates, along with the sculptor Phidias, understood that without those adjustments, the building would appear warped or uneven when viewed from below. One of the most striking design choices is entasis, a gentle outward bulge in the middle of each column. Without this feature, the columns would appear to curve inward under the weight of the structure, creating a visual weakness. The curvature is almost undetectable to the casual observer, but it ensures that every column looks perfectly straight from the human view. The columns also taper slightly as they rise, and they are intentionally tilted inward. While mathematically incorrect, this slight inward lean prevents the building from appearing to bow outward when viewed from a distance. Every angle and line was chosen to fix how the eye would otherwise misread the form. Even the stylobate, the platform supporting the columns, isn't flat. It rises subtly at the center, correcting the illusion of sagging that long horizontal lines often create. That curve, invisible unless measured, helps the building maintain its visual stability. The same logic applies to the decorative features. The metopes and friezes, filled with mythological and ceremonial scenes like the Panathenaic procession, were crafted for people viewing them from ground level. The figures are deliberately distorted, elongated or deepened, to appear correct from below. What seems perfectly natural to the eye is, in fact, a series of visual cheats. These design strategies show that the builders of the Parthenon weren't just concerned with proportion on paper. They engineered perception. Every decision, from the shape of a column to the spacing of carvings, was based on how it would look to a real viewer standing in the real world. The result isn't an accidental masterpiece. It's a calculated manipulation of space, vision, and proportion. No modern blueprint could match the human logic embedded in its construction. Even today, with digital tools and precise machinery, replicating the Parthenon exactly remains nearly impossible. Its visual perfection is a lie. A brilliant, deliberate, and mathematical lie. Earthquake resistance. Machu Picchu has become one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. There is a vast literature published about this place. Everything that can be said about the wonder of the world is surrounded by mysteries. Who constructed it? What was it created for? By whom was it inhabited? Why was it abandoned? Did the invaders know of it? What was its real name? These and other questions constantly surround Machu Picchu. Between 1438 and 1491, the city was hit by at least 2 major earthquakes, and the aftermath of those events triggered a fascinating shift in construction strategy, one that still shapes the ruins we see today. A study led by the Geological Survey of Spain and Oxford Earth Sciences analyzed the structural remains and identified over 140 signs of seismic impact, from massive stone blocks that had shifted out of place to minor but abnormal fractures along stone corners. This damage marked a major turning point. The builders changed course, from shaping large, interlocked stones to stacking smaller rocks in more manageable layers. The response was practical, and the results are visible. It shows that the Inca engineers weren't just artists in stonework, but also keen observers of their environment, willing to adapt their methods for stability. Machu Picchu's design reflects that awareness. Among its most important seismic defenses is the use of ashlar masonry, where stones are shaped so precisely that they fit together without mortar. The walls aren't vertical, they often tilt inward just slightly, a subtle technique that helps hold the structure together under pressure. These joints allow a bit of flexibility, meaning the stones can shift during a quake and then resettle into place without collapsing. Another hallmark of this system is the trapezoidal shape found throughout the city. Doorways, windows, and niches all share this same form. With their wider bases and narrower tops, they spread out seismic energy instead of concentrating it, offering greater structural resistance to ground motion. But Machu Picchu's resilience doesn't stop with its walls. Its foundation also plays a critical role. The site sits on a ridge between two fault lines, where rainfall is heavy and earthquakes are possible. To account for that, the Incas built layered terraces with an underground drainage network to control water flow. This system prevents saturation and reduces pressure against the buildings, making landslides and structural shifts far less likely. The layout wasn't accidental. It was engineered. Derinkuyu Underground City. Derinkuyu is an underground city that once housed over 20,000 people. Its discovery in 1963 was purely accidental. A local resident renovating his home stumbled upon the ancient city, unaware he had found a marvel carved by hand as far back as the 7th century BC. Originally built as a sanctuary, Derinkuyu provided protection against war and persecution. Massive stone doors safeguarded its entrances, while a sophisticated ventilation system and a well-ensured ample air and water for its residents, including their livestock. The city featured a range of facilities, from living quarters and schools to a church and even a cellar for producing wine and oil. While most historians attribute its construction to the Phrygians, some argue it may predate them, possibly rivaling the age of Göbekli Tepe. Derinkuyu remains a great mystery as to who built the city, how, and why it was eventually abandoned. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon in the next one.